The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Somewhere along the line, it was a daily life moment. I had this thought, and it stayed with me and has rung true enough that I wanted to talk about it. And that is simplifying our lives, how to do that. And what I want to talk about first is clutter. In other words, how do we clutter our lives, and how do we simplify our lives? And there's all kinds of things, directions I could go, and I probably will go in a few of them. But what I realized in that moment was that we don't have to bring all the clutter of our lives or all the stuff that we carry into every single moment. We just don't, we can't. You know, we do try, but we don't need to do that. And that's the clutter. By simplifying, what I'm going to talk about is, I'll tell you in a while, because I'm going to start with my talk, about a story which happened a long, long time ago. My mother had a friend, she was in her 90s, and she asked me to stop by her friend's house to see how she was doing. So I walked into the yard, was getting normal stuff, but I walked into her house, and she had so much stuff everywhere. It was so cluttered. There was so much stuff that she actually could not, she had pathways, narrow pathways, and she was an older person. And I think maybe that was what she could manage, or physically that was how she could lead her life. So it wasn't a criticism, but what I saw there was that her life, her movement in her life was restricted. And it was just stuff. It was like there wasn't any room for anything else to be put or to stacked up. It was difficult, and she was doing fine though within her own life in that way. So that's one kind of a clutter that I think that people do, and I don't begrudge anybody for falling into that kind of situation, but this happens. And the next thing is, what is clutter? And so I looked it up as a definition, and it's to clot, like a blood clot is the kind of the translation of it, of the word itself. And then a further definition is to run in disorder, to fill or covered with scattered or disordered things that impede movement or reduce effectiveness. And that rings true for me. And number 2 is a crowded or confused mess or collection. So that's another form of clutter. And I feel that most of us are really good at filling our lives up with thoughts and things to do, and all kinds of information. It's endless, infinitely available to us, and not only available to us, but is beguiling. Like it draws us in a way that perhaps is not worth it, isn't valid. And I read a book review not too long ago of a book about, what was the name of it? The Wandering Mind was the review of that book. And here's what she writes. And she's a good writer. She says, she wrote, perhaps this, let's see, perhaps this way. So she's talking about general people in general, that we just get into situations that are kind of normal for a lot of people. Perhaps this is why so many of us have half-done tasks on our to-do list and half-read books on our bedside tables, scroll through Instagram while simultaneously semi-watching Netflix, and swipe between apps and tabs endlessly from when we first open our eyes in the morning until we finally fall asleep. And so one uncomfortable explanation for why so many aspects of modern life corrode our attention, and that's what she's saying, is that this is what is corroding our attention, is that they do not merit it. And that is, okay, so there's the problem for those of us who don't live in monasteries, but hope to make a good use of our days, is figuring out what might. Good question. She ends the article with, where should the mind rest? Amidst that description of, it's like, what more could you possibly do in that moment than what she described? I don't know, but some of us try sometimes. Now, what came to my mind was an article that I think a number of us are familiar with, that has been around at the Abbey for a long time, and that is, if all of you can remember Reverend Master Daisui's article, Every Minute Zazen, or meditation, and I decided to look that up because I thought that I'd like to hear his teaching on that. So that is what I'm going to offer as a counter to Clutter. The Clutter that she mentions in that paragraph is his teaching on every minute meditation. So I'll tell you what they are. They're simple, but very effective. I can tell you I've tried them out many times over the years. One is do one thing at a time. The second is pay attention to what you are doing as well as do one thing at a time. The third thing, when your mind wanders to something else, bring it back. And the fourth thing is repeat this step a few 100,000 times. So that tells you a lot, that it's not going to be something that is just you're going to get quick results from. It takes time and practice and starting to see the good value in doing only one thing at a time. And he writes, I think this is a good sentence to start with, do one thing at a time. He writes, if we accept that this one moment truly exists and is one and undivided, then it can only be realized by a mind which is itself unified and aware. So if we're distracted by different things so much that we aren't paying attention to the moment, this moment right now is undivided and truly exists. And this is where we can find a way to, if we choose, to unclutter our mind. And I find that is a very practical and very profound statement that I can do practically, but the profundity of it is not something that you can realize in 5 minutes. It's something that's very profound, and that would be that this moment is one and undivided. I think that takes some time to see that we're talking about the reality of this present moment, not what we think the reality is. Just to be still with that. But it's not, he's saying not just to be present in the moment, but he says you have to pay attention to what the moment is. In other words, if you're saying, well, I'm present in the moment, I think saying paying attention to what you're doing actually helps you see that maybe you aren't really present in the moment, or you're not really doing one thing at a time. So the paying attention is really important to bring awareness into what we're doing, not just think, well, I'm present, sure, I'm walking down the street or I'm walking up the cloister, yeah, you're present, but are you paying attention to what you're doing? And I have to tell you a story here that I learned, and this is not I'm not telling you this story because it's going to happen if you don't pay attention, but I was in Shasta Abbey last fall, And so I was, it was a schedule. We were all meeting together, and it was raining, as it does over there a lot. And I was hanging up my raincoat, and it was really wet because I'd been out in the rain. And then I had a meeting. You know, we were going to meet in like 5 minutes, and I went, I got to get over there. That was one of my first mistakes. I got to hurry, you know, I got to get over there and get to the meeting fast. And I thought, oh, but I need to use the bathroom first. So I just turned I wasn't really present. I was more like in the next step, like I was going to be, you know, finished with the bathroom and on my way to the meeting, I'd be on time. I wasn't really present. So what did I do? I tripped over a coat rack foot, fell, and broke my leg. Now this, you know, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but the thing is, something that I learned from this situation was slow down and take the time to pay attention to what I'm doing and not to think. We're so habituated by thinking in a certain way, but this is a different kind of thing. I could have just slowed down and walked, this far around the coat hanger, you know, the foot, and I would have been fine. But I was just instantly, you know, spontaneously turn, go to the bathroom door, boom, I fell. And so it's just something that I really have learned in my life. The lesson for me was that clearly slow down, and I have really taken that to heart, and it's good, really good teaching for me. So these things, there's available teachings here for us to slow down. You know, it was quite helpful. I didn't like it one bit, but it was quite, it was helpful. And I think when our mind starts to wander off, it's just an awareness that is exactly what's happening. Oh, you know, if our minds are wandering off, to bring them back into the present moment, and not to find that there's a judgment with that, find that there's a problem with that, or that we've done something wrong, or we should do better, or we're not perfect, you know, all that kind of stuff. Just simply, like that word, simply bring it back to the present moment. What am I doing now? And it's a decision we need to make. Like, what am I doing now? Well, I don't want to be here right now. I don't like what I'm doing. You know, that's a fair assessment. Well, yeah, okay. Well, is there something else that needs to be done that is more important to do than what you're doing right at that moment? Or is there something that I've forgotten that's niggling at me? You know, there's questions there. We can still have the awareness, what is good to do here? What do I need to do right now within this moment? And move through life in that way. Because, let's see here. So that's what Reverend Master Daisui recommends, doing one thing at a time, paying attention to what you are doing as well as to do one thing at a time. And then when your mind wanders to something else, bring it back. And then repeat the step a few 100,000 times. And then if your mind keeps wandering to the same thing over and over, to take note of that. And maybe there's a good thing that you need to pay attention to, like you're missing, I don't know, anything, or you're not, you're in a dangerous situation. Or on another note on that light is that perhaps there's an insight right there for you. Like if I could have paid attention when I was in a hurry to slow down, and I listened to that, maybe I would have had a different outcome. I don't really know, but it didn't happen. But these things are possible. These things do pop up in the moment that are quite helpful. And an image that I liked that I found was what we're trying to do in this practice that Reverend Master Daisui offers in every minute meditation is like a bird sitting on a nest. And it's so the bird is sitting on the eggs of the nest, and she is sitting there in the present moment because she's got her life, we hope, in the eggs. But she's also alert for danger. And who knows, she might be thinking about how hungry she's, all this kind, or it's too hot, all kinds of things. But she's sitting there in the moment, but not just with a hard view of things, but it's more of an openness that actually takes in the situation in a broader way than I think a lot of us are used to. And it's a very useful image because it's, I've tried, it's a way to keep track of things without having to be so focused on one thing that you lose the sense of what else is going on, the context of what else needs to be done and what your life is about. And years ago, I had a story. I had a kaleidoscope, you know what those things are, that we had. I think it was Room Master Jiyu's giveaway table that we had one time, and I just kept it around, and I would look at it now and then because it's pretty, and I found that a nice thing to do. But one time I was in a snit, I was kind of like, I didn't like what was going on, or I don't know what it was. I was a novice. So it was daylight, and I just held this thing up to the window, and I saw everything. So the kaleidoscope shows you everything, but it's broken up in little pieces. So you have a piece here, and the added thing is it has prismatic colors that shine through. So you have broken up whatever my life was looking out the window, plus the prismatic colors. So it was very different, and I just looked at it and went, because I was so focused on this thing that was really upsetting me, that it just broke it all apart, and I started to laugh, saying, look what you're doing, this is totally ridiculous that you're so focused on this one thing, because here's the kaleidoscope, and here's another view. And it was, I felt it was a gift that I actually could see that, and that I could respond in that way that was helpful in my life, that I could actually not take that focus thing that I was so sure I was right, or I was so sure I was hurt, whatever it was, wasn't actually, there was more to it than that. So it didn't exclude my thoughts, but it at the same time, it just broadened it out in a way that was acceptable to me, something that I could relate to. My next part of the talk is going to be, why would we want to practice these things of staying in the moment? And so Reverend Master Daisui, he says if you do his every minute meditation properly, he says the exercise of it is refreshing, liberating, and energizing. And I think that is true. However, I thought that it was more that, for me, it was calming, and I wrote it down here somewhere. And practicing that has just helped me be more calm in the moment, because I'm not trying to carry more than what the moment holds, if that makes sense. So I'm not trying to carry everything, be responsible, have the burden of whatever it is I'm trying to do, but just all we can do is one thing at a time. We can't really carry everything and do it in the moment. We have one choice to do one thing at a time. And I have found that quite helpful, and it's helped me to simplify my mind so I don't have to think about, some big project that's totally overwhelming. I can't think of something right now, but I'm sure there is. How am I going to make it through the next week? How's that? Well, I don't know, but I'm going to take one step at a time, and there's an element of trust there that comes with practicing this, what I'm talking about today, to practice it, that you can trust it so that you do in effect, even though I may have a lot to do, accomplish what I do in a calmer way and one thing at a time, and things get done. Not every single little thing right away, but they get done, and I'm just, I think that is worth it for me to carry on with that. Now, his practice is pretty demanding in terms of, bringing back yourself to the moment over and over again, a few 100,000 times. I don't think he's saying that if you pick this up, to do it from now until 100,000 times, to do it straight, but to take a break. So if you're trying to learn how to pay attention to one thing at a time, you don't do it all the time, but you give yourself a break. Do something else for a while to relax, and then, and when you feel like it's a good thing to pick it up again, then it's okay. And also I have found something, this is a really silly story, but it's true, that happened to me because I needed help. Okay, here we go. So one night I was falling asleep and I was ready, I was just dozing off, where you get to that relaxed mode and it's just kind of a nice, slipping into sleep. And I wanted to say, I wonder what time it is. So I reached up to my travel alarm, and this word travel is significant. And what I did is I missed the clock and I hit it, just trying to find the darn thing. So we went over, hit the wall, went down the bed, and went underneath the bed, and I had no idea where it was. Okay? That woke me up. And I thought, okay, I can't believe I had to do this. So I got down on my stomach because I couldn't find it. I didn't have a flashlight. I was groping around in the dark trying to find this darn thing. And then I sat up. I can't believe this happened. So I had clothes that I had set out for the morning. And so I sat up, and my clothes draped over my head. And I was sitting there. And what came to my mind, I said, this has got to be a comedy of errors. I thought I said, this is really classic. And it broke me out of the whole thing of what happened, and not to get so angst. I was just kind of in that mode. I go, oh God, why did that happen? And I couldn't find the darn clock. And I thought, one thing, I said, I never thought about a travel alarm traveling in that kind of way. But it brought humor into the situation where I could actually accept it. And I thought, it's really okay. Just put the clock back on the chest of drawers, climb back into bed, and I think it's going to be all right. Which it was. But I just thought, whatever I thought at the time. But it really helped me later to be more calm and more expecting, when things that happen like that, not to be so upset, because it just wasn't worth it. I mean, it came and went. It wasn't that important. But at the time, it happened, and it was actually good teaching for me. Really good teaching. And I still put that into practice. I don't think about me sitting on the floor. I couldn't believe it. My clothes were like over my head. I couldn't even see. And I just thought, this has got to be a comedy of errors, I thought. But anyway. But I learned something, and that's the important thing, that these things do happen, I think, to a lot of us in that kind of way where you can hardly believe that something has happened, and there you are in the middle of something. So I found that was actually a helpful experience in the long run. It was another jewel, another insight of new viewing, of learning. And what this helps us, this practice that Master Daisui is suggesting, is it helps us to be open and to be willing. It's not a matter of being willful, but it's more being willing in the moment, and not to kind of say, I'm going to muscle through this, or I'm going to, be willful. I'm going to, these kinds of thoughts. I'm going to do the best, put up walls of, I'm going to get through this, I hate it, and all that kind of stuff. But just being more gentle with ourselves, being open and more willing in the moment to do what needs to be done. And that is how we can simplify our lives, I think. Well, I've proved that true for myself, so it is true. And I'm going to end with a poem that I like, that I found, or was given to me. And I've had to reword it just a little bit, but here it is. Hidden meanings abound as my sight becomes clear in the moment. The eternally present moment teaches me to see things differently, which it does. Reaching down through the ocean's foam. Let's see here. My fingers rest upon a pearl, a jewel, or an insight at the bottom of the sea. So thank you, and I wish you well in your day, and thanks for all coming.